You are watching a BoiseDev live presentation, The Growth Vote. You are watching a BoiseDev live presentation, The Growth Vote, presented by Regents Blue Shield of Idaho, featuring our live panel and your questions. Next.
There's no place quite like Idaho. That's why Regents Blue Shield of Idaho is constantly reimagining the healthcare experience, tailoring it to fit the needs of local families and businesses. Rooted here since 1946, we're shaping the future with cutting-edge digital solutions, Idaho-based customer service, and unparalleled access to top doctors. That's the Regents difference you can count on. We get you because we are you.
The Growth Vote. Here's your host, Gretchen Parsons.
Hi, thanks so much for joining us tonight. I'm Gretchen Parsons. I'm joined with the rest of the BoiseDev team for this election night for our coverage. We have Don Day joining us, of course, Margaret Carmel remotely, Autumn Robertson, and our special guest, Meredith Steed. Thank you so much for joining us, guys.
Thank you for having us.
Are we ready to have fun?
I think so. Yeah, we got a long night ahead of us.
I said on Twitter, this is, or maybe it was Facebook, this is the wonkiest, nerdiest live coverage out there. So these are people who really care about the municipal elections. And we're going to have fun.
Yeah, we are. We're going to provide a lot of coverage because the polls have closed. It's 8:33, so too early. I don't believe anything has been, any ballots have come in yet.
Nothing
yet.
Nada.
Probably around 9 o'clock usually they start to trickle in.
Yeah, and Margaret, did you talk to Phil McGrain about this at all? Do you know if we're going to wait till 9 on these results? Or
I saw on Twitter that we're going to be waiting until 9. I did not talk to anyone from the Ada County Clerk's office myself, but they put out an announcement online to look for results around then.
Okay.
So we'll talk about what we're going to see in the next 30 minutes.
That's right. Until then, well, let's dive right into it then and talk about some of the elections that are going on in Boise. Let's start with the city council races. So seat 1, Margaret, that's TJ Thompson's seat, and he's not seeking re-election.
That's correct. So this is an open seat. We have 3 candidates running tonight. First, we have Lucy Willits. She is backed by the Republican Party and raked in a lot of donations and has really garnered quite a lot of support. You can see quite a lot of her signs and mailers. Then you have Laura Messler. She has a former state candidate for the Democratic Party. She's also had mailers come out, and I've seen some signs and support from her on social media. David Jones is the last candidate. He's a little bit of a wild card. He declined any interviews, did not create a website, raise any money during the race, and really he wrote on the city's website that he was going to rely on his faith in God and word of mouth to spread news of his election. So he's someone who is, I would say, a long shot because he has not promoted himself. And so that's going to be a 2-man race between Willits and Messler. And that's going to be very interesting because that is a swing district in the legislative seats. That's a purple district. So anything can happen out there. We will see what happens.
Does there appear to be a front runner yet, or is that kind of hard to say?
Well, it's hard to say now. I would predict that because of the fundraising total and the sheer amount of signs that I've seen from Willits, I would say she's the favorite right now. But anything can happen right now. It is very early. We don't want to get too into the horse race stuff that just raises the drama without any sort of substance. But
it's funny driving down Eagle Road in Meridian because Lucy Willits has signs on Eagle Road. Yeah. And so you'll see like Lucy Willits signs, and you'll see like Meridian candidate signs. So it's kind of interesting that they're really paying attention to people who maybe live in Boise but are working or driving.
Yeah, trying to, anything they can do to get the word out, I guess.
Yeah. So we're talking about
she's
C3.
She's
Go ahead,
even
Margaret.
brought that up.
Say that again?
She's brought that up where the West Boise is in a unique place because it's right between Meridian on one side, Eagle on another side, Garden City on another side. And I think she's really aware that people who live in that area frequently cross city lines and don't know that they do. And so, you know, even though if you're on one side of the line, you can only vote in a certain election, there isn't a force field, you know, between cities, right?
That's a good point, yeah.
You know, and so I think I think Dawn's absolutely right. She's really capitalizing the fact that that particular part of Boise flows in and out of these other different localities, and you can't stop your messaging just at the city line.
And Boise and Meridian have really kind of turned into one city over the years. I talk about this a lot. They used to have that long drive to Meridian, and now you're like, wait, am I Meridian or Boise? I can't even tell.
It kind of blends together.
It's all blended together.
Well, seat 3, that one is going to be definitely, well, there's a lot to watch tonight, but that'll be one for sure. Lisa Sanchez, of course, the incumbent, then Greg Mcmillan, Nicholas Domney, Maria Santa Cruz Cernick. Talk about that race a little bit, Margaret.
So all eyes are on this race. This has attracted big money, big PAC mailers and support. I think that this is the one that everyone's watching tonight. City Council member Sanchez has become a divisive figure in the past year or so. She's the only renter on Boise City Council. She's also the first Latina to be elected. And she, frankly, got a lot of criticism in 2020 for some comments that she made after the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis related to racial justice. And she faced a recall last year. Greg Mcmillan is, sorry, go on.
No, go ahead.
Greg Mcmillan is a realtor who is challenging against her. He is running with backing of the police union, the fire union, and a lot of people who are supporting his campaign are, you know, people who align themselves with the campaign to recall Lisa Sanchez. And he's been running on a centrist platform, even though PACs that have backed him are heavily Republican, and, you know, the same PAC that ran attack ads against Commissioner Laciando in 2020 that likely contributed to her loss in that race. So
I know you live up there. You were saying that you're seeing, what are you seeing up in that district? You said you were seeing a lot of signs, or what?
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of Greg Mcmillan signs when I'm driving down Harrison and really any streets around me. And I was kind of surprised to see that. I have seen a few Lisa Sanchez signs, but nothing else really.
And, you know, he barely outraised Lisa Sanchez. They were neck and neck on money, and he's been spending big on ads, billboards, signs, social media, all sorts of things. And so this district it covers all the way to the Eagle line down into the North End and the Highlands. So we're going to see what happens. The other two candidates, Maria Santa Cruz Cernick, is endorsed by the Ada County Central Republican Committee. She is a self-described constitutional conservative, and she has run, you know, she's a small business owner. And I've also seen a billboard from her. And so we're going to see how many Republicans are going to vote for her, or how many they're going to go for Mcmillan, who is the front runner. And so we're going to see how much she will break off from the Mcmillan support. Nicholas Domney is another small business owner. He did not raise any donations the last time I looked at his reports. And last night on social media and today, he endorsed Greg Mcmillan and encouraged his voters to support him. So we're seeing some consolidation in that race. And so, again, we're going to see how much it's going to come down to turnout. It's going to come, and I think it's going to come down to how many Republicans are going to vote for Mcmillan, the independent candidate, or how many of them are going to vote for Maria Santa Cruz Cernick, who is a political newcomer and, you know, has some views that are much further right than the rest of the field.
Margaret, I have a question. Is it typical for city council to become so partisan? I feel like we're seeing so much of that this year, where the where the parties are endorsing candidates and really getting behind with their PACs and things like that. Do we see that normally in city council races?
I think it depends. Nationwide, we've seen a huge trend where local races are becoming partisan, where they were not before. There's a huge injection of that. I think a lot of that has to do with the pandemic. A lot of that has to do with rhetoric that has come out related to racial justice topics and other things. For instance, Maria Santa Cruz Cernick has posted a lot on her page about critical race theory. That is an education topic. The city of Boise has nothing to do with schools, nothing to do with education, but it is a topic that she has posted about a lot. And I think that that is really indicative of these national issues, these national debates coming down into these local races in a way we have not seen before. But again, if you look back in the 2019 race, Planned Parenthood endorsed Mayor Mcmillan. And Conservation Voters for Idaho, which is a big spender for Democratic campaigns at the state level, heavily funded Mayor
And
McMillan.
Republican campaigns. Big money behind Brad Little. Yeah.
No, you're right. My apologies for that oversight. And so, we have seen a little bit of those groups, I'm going to use special interest groups or things coming into the races. But this is the first year that I've covered a local election where I've gotten multiple messages from readers who are very upset that the main focus of my interview with candidates is the policies that the candidate wants to enact if they're elected and not their party. I've had several messages where people say their party is all I care about. Why won't you tell me their party? Whereas our policy at BoiseDev has been to focus on policies. What do you want to do if you're elected?
And some of them use their
That's
policies,
interesting.
right?
Yeah,
and
definitely.
Some of them use their party and some don't.
Yeah. That's interesting.
And I think on that seat too, I think another really interesting thing, because I think I had read that the donations, like although maybe Sanchez and Mcmillan are neck and neck in donations, their dollar amounts were really different. Is that right? Did he have like $1,000 as his max and hers was something like $23 or something like that?
Yeah, you that is absolutely correct. Mcmillan raked in a lot of maximum donations, a lot of $1,000 donations, and then some of the same people turning around and donating to PACs, even bigger numbers. Whereas Lisa Sanchez saw a lot of $10 donations, $20 donations, $50 donations, and it was a lot from more individuals, whereas you went down the Mcmillan campaign and you had some big names. The Albertson Foundation was a donor to the Mcmillan campaign.
And Margaret, I think this is a good place to put this piece of reporting in. And we've mentioned it before. The Albertson Foundation is interesting because Greg McMillan's ex-wife is Jamie Jo Scott, who is on the board of directors of the Albertsons Foundation and is very involved in city politics. So some interesting dynamics there.
Yeah. And this is a question for anyone, or Margaret. How does that, I guess, can you tell anything from, I guess, the type of funds the candidates get? Like you guys were saying how, Sanchez's, those amounts were more smaller sums versus Mcmillan. Is there anything like to glean from that?
Well, I think it says a lot about the type of people that are supporting the campaign. A lot of the people who I've seen on social media supporting Sanchez are renters. Typically renters don't have super deep pockets, or people who, younger people, just less financial firepower, I guess. I don't know.
Sure.
That's kind of a weird political way to say it, but yeah, it kind of comes across.
It also seems like
pocket change.
Could it be? I mean, we will obviously know this soon enough, but could it also be? If they're neck and neck in the numbers, Lisa Sanchez obviously would then have more people who have donated to her campaigin.
That's what I was thinking too.
Could or could not mean more supporters behind her.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. I think it's also.
Go ahead.
No, I think that's absolutely true, but I also would caution, trying to draw causation from number of donors to number of voters, because something that's really a unique dynamic here is that we're split into districts, and a lot of the people who maybe really support Mcmillan or really support Sanchez might not live in the district. So someone might have gave to one of those two campaigns, but doesn't even live there. Or if you looked back at the campaign, the attempted campaign to recall Lisa Sanchez, she had a lot of people who wanted to recall her who did not live in city limits. That was a constant, you saw that comment on social media all the time. I wish I could sign the petition, but I don't live in city limits. I hope someone votes her out. I would if I could. And so it makes you wonder, it's like, are there people that are outside of the city limits that were donating to Mcmillan's campaign or donating to any of the other candidates' campaigns? And likewise, are there people in other districts that are donating to Sanchez? And so I think it's important I think it is interesting to compare the bigger numbers for Mcmillan versus the smaller numbers for Sanchez. But I think that does not give us the key to, there's no magic bullet to predict this race at this point. The last thing that I'll say is I think Mcmillan's campaign expenditures point to a wealthier support base. He was hosting campaign fundraisers at Crane Creek Country Club. Sure. I saw, in his expenditures, meals at Ruth's Chris Steakhouse, some of these other, you see someone having a fundraiser at Crane Creek and you're like, oh, that's big money. That's kind of old school Boise money. And I think
should we talk about Meridian a little bit?
That's a different thing. And yes, I would love to hear about Meridian. You don't want to hear from me anymore.
No. We'll come back to you.
We saw another Boise race to talk about.
Yeah. You hang tight.
We're waiting for results. We should tell people who are watching, why aren't they showing results?
Just tuning in, 8:47, and we don't have anything, right?
No,
not yet.
Nothing.
So
soon.
Yeah, soon. We're thinking about 9 o'clock. Those will start to trickle in. But let's talk about Meridian a little bit. Autumn, I know you've been providing readers with a lot of coverage of the city council races there. We have seat 2, seat 4, seat 6. Let's start with seat 2. Joe Gordon and Hunter Wolf. Now, Joe, that's the incumbent, right, Autumn?
Right. Yeah, he's a longtime city. He calls himself he wants to keep the city Meridian, but he's I think he's been in the Republican Party for 30 years.
Okay.
And he, like most of the candidates, are big into focusing on growth because the city is growing so fast. And then the other person running is Hunter Wolf, who I was able to get into contact with initially, but then I never heard back from him. But what I could find was that he is a conservative from various flyers that were sent around. And then I was looking on Instagram and Twitter, and I found another page, Conservatives of Meridian, that backed Hunter Wolf for seat 2.
And Autumn, you mentioned that through the forums you've been on where the city council hopefuls participate, one of the issues that always comes up is growth. I live in Meridian. It is exploding like crazy. There's new homes popping up on almost every corner. What do they say? I imagine they're concerned about traffic, or what I guess specifically related to growth, or do the candidates really care about that they've told you?
There's Autumn.
Uh-oh.
Want
I think we're having some trouble with Autumn's Wi-Fi.
A little bit of technical difficulties.
The lights went off in here a minute ago.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't be a BoiseDev live event if things didn't go wrong.
We
should thank Jeff Heath and the BII folks whose space we're in tonight.
Yes.
Wonderful furniture, and I bet Jeff is at home turning off the lights on us because the lights all went off. Autumn, I think we've got you now.
Are you there?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Oh, yes. There. Okay. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. You got cut off when you were talking about growth and kind of, I guess, the specific issues that growth is causing in Meridian, and what the candidates had to say about it, at least for,
Yeah, I mean, the incumbents all have similar ideas, stick to the plan. They have the, Can you guys hear me?
We
Yeah,
can.
yeah,
Yeah,
you're good.
you're good.
It's going like it's making a weird noise on my end. Sorry.
Yeah, your Wi-Fi is really low, it looks like, which might be our trick there. Keep going. We can hear you.
I can't hear you.
Should we go back to Boise for now?
Yep.
Okay, we will pivot back to Boise, check in with Autumn in just a little bit. So Margaret, before we cut you off, we were talking about seat 5. Of course, incumbent Holly Woodings. Then we have Steve Madden, Crispin Gravatt, and Katie Fight. Why don't you tell us about that race? That's supposed to be another one that's pretty contested as well.
For sure. And you can cut me off anytime. I can talk till the cows come home. So sometimes I need
That's
someone
good.
to yank me off stage. Seat 5 is a really interesting race. We've got four interesting candidates. We have the incumbent city council member, Holly Woodings. She's been in for 4 years. Previously, she was in the state legislature as a Democrat. She ran as the for Secretary of State and lost, and then shifted over to city council. She's running on a lot of kind of the same strategies. She's pro zoning code rewrite. She is pro wastewater renewal bond, and she is, looking to create a redistricting process for next year that has more public input. And those are sort of her talking points. Her main opponent is Katie Fight. Or one of her main opponents is Katie Fight. She is a longtime Boise activist. If you've been involved in Boise politics in the last couple of years, you know her. She has spoken out a bit against the bike park in Military Reserve, the construction of the trucking terminal near Blue Valley, and she is a sharp critic of upzoning, density, zoning code rewrite, all of that. She has been really critical of the mayor and city council for a lot of things related to growth and as well as the city's water renewal plan. And so she, I'm really interested to see the vote total she brings in, because that's, I think, going to give us a strong indication of how people are feeling about the direction the city is going. The other candidates, Crispin Gravatt, he is the chairman of the city's Public Works Commission. He was really, really involved in creating the city's wastewater renewal plan, which is the bond that they're voting on tonight. And so he's been, he is pro water renewal bond, pro zoning code rewrite. He has expressed support for the shelter on State Street, lots of other sorts of things like that. But he is largely aligned with Holly Woodings on certain things, on most things. And then you have Steve Madden. He is another constitutional conservative, backed by the Ada County Central Republican Central Committee, and he is the farthest right-wing candidate in the race by far. And he has talked about wanting to limit growth, oppose the city's affordable housing plans, generally just oppose the direction that the city is going, oppose the wastewater bond. And, again, he's right-wing, so he's going to be pro cutting regulation, cutting all these sorts of things. Like, for example, he does not support any licensing for Airbnbs, just like Woodings. And his argument was if long-term rental units are not licensed, then short-term rentals should not be licensed either. And that sort of, I think, is pretty indicative about his thoughts on a lot of things. And so that race is going to be super interesting. All 4 candidates have been out there getting it, knocking doors, and then we've got the incumbent in Woodings' corner. And so I am very curious to see what happens in that race. It's even, in a way, it's even more unpredictable than District 3, simply because there's 4 people there.
Meredith, you've been in this situation before. You ran for Boise City Council. What do you think the candidates are feeling right now? This has to be nerve-wracking. I mean, it's 9:00. The polls just closed. They're probably, I don't know. I would imagine nervous, anxious.
I'm nervous, and I'm not running for
anything.
Same.
Hopefully they have a drink in their hand, because there's nothing else that they can do at this point. Polls have closed. So yeah, exactly. So they are done with their work and just definitely holding their breath to see what's going to happen. District 5, that's my district, actually, and it's such an eclectic district. It includes, a lot of different neighborhoods kind of all over the city. It'll be so interesting. And I actually didn't I got door knocked once, and I tried to talk to the candidate because I was actually, somebody knocked on my door and I was like, oh my gosh, I would love to talk to them, and kind of pick their brain and stuff. And I answered the door, and I'm not even going to say who it is because it's like too awkward, but they sort of just like threw the flyer at me, and with their back to me said, I'm running for city council, as they left my doorstep. And I was like, okay, well, there we go. And it's, so it'll be really interesting to see. There are definitely a lot of Katie Fight signs up in my neighborhood.
One of those 4 people. We'll cut it down for folks.
Yeah, you'll have to tell me off the air who it was.
Right? Yeah, pretty interesting though. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of nerves right now, but also, any control you had over the situation is now gone. So hopefully there's, I know for me, I was surrounded by a ton of people that had been really supportive of me. And so it was actually a blast. I had a really good time kind of waiting that out until you decide it's time to go home,
So Meredith, you're on planning and zoning, and the city council's been fairly aligned. If there's change at the city council level, do those manifest themselves at planning and zoning, or does that take time? Do you think that there's any interface there, or is that just kind of something that will take a while?
It'll be, sort of, who knows, it's going to be pretty interesting. Certainly once the project leaves planning and zoning, I things that I'm invested in, it's interesting to follow along and see what happens to them and what happens at council. But, at that point, again, it's sort of out of our hands. And so it'll be interesting to see, right, if we have 3 districts up for election tonight, and it could go to 3 conservatives, which would be a really different dynamic than we've had on city council. And so will we see then the mayor having to get involved in more votes? It'll just be, there's a lot at stake here, I think, as far as the city's future goes. It'll be really interesting to see what happens.
Meredith, just curious, what would you say the most challenging part of running a campaign is?
It's exhausting. I wonder, we've seen almost in a few of the districts anyway, there are people who maybe didn't really campaign, and that just baffles me. I don't know why you would put your name in the hat if you weren't going to really try for it. And it's exhausting. It's if you are really working for it, I was working, before work, and then working my job, and then working, until midnight, and starting again at 5 in the morning. Margaret. Right. It's really exhausting because you want to talk to as many people as you can. And so you never want to pass up the chance to connect with a voter. So it's pretty exhausting. So I would say that, right now is that kind of euphoria, hopefully, for candidates where anything's possible, and they're going to be really excited. And then hopefully they'll just sleep the rest of the week. We'll see.
Take it easy a little bit.
Yeah.
Autumn back. Should we talk about Meridian?
Yeah, let's jump back over to Meridian. We got Autumn's audio up and running.
Sweet. Okay, so sorry about that. I think my Wi-Fi is back on, but I was talking about growth, and a lot of the incumbents are about sticking to the comprehensive plan, doing smart growth, Oh, and then what I was getting into before that was a lot of the newcomers are about common sense and growing only what needs to happen. For example, Mike Hahn, when I talked to him, he told me that they should step back a little bit and consider, do they actually need some of the projects they're working on? And he kind of wants to slow down growth because it's causing a lot of traffic. And that was he was saying the same kind of stuff about slowing down on growth, deciding if it's actually necessary, and being more or using more common sense, while the incumbents, like I said, are sticking with the comprehensive plan because they have a plan in place and know where they need to be growing and adding these high density apartments and housing in subdivisions.
What's so interesting to me, like, how do we have candidates in both cities saying, let's stop growth. I mean, what does that mean? Does that mean like stop moving companies from bringing their trucks here? Is it just specific to development? That is so confusing to me.
Right. And it doesn't seem like they really have an answer a lot of the times when you ask.
I think it's a common thing, right? And I understand why they're tapping into that. And you can see that in the growth surveys. And like when we're thinking editorially about stuff, like it's really easy to be like, oh, hey, look at this great new project. But I've learned, and we've learned over the years, that some people aren't going to be excited. Even yesterday, right? We did a story about Shields coming to Meridian. It's got a freaking Ferris wheel in the store. But you look at the social media reaction, and a lot of people are not excited about that.
Oh, I didn't pick up on that. For what reason?
People are worried that we're looking like Anytown USA, that it's just growth for growth's sake.
Oh, I see.
And so these things that I used to think were a slam dunk, that people are like, oh, people are going to love this.
Not so much.
I just don't know anymore. And so it's always interesting. So that anti-growth sentiment, I think, has grown.
Something, just living in Meridian, I feel like there's so many like apartment complexes and subdivisions that have been popping up. Autumn, I feel like you write about one at least like once a day.
It's like our Slack channel. What's Autumn doing today? I've got a Meridian subdivision.
Exactly.
Every day.
Just my little rant. I would like to see some more restaurants, at least where I live, because it's just all like apartments, houses. I don't know. That's just my little take. I'd like to see some more shopping.
If you'd like to bring a restaurant to Meridian, Gretchen, we'll give you some suggestions.
Yeah, please. That's just my little comment. So Autumn, you were saying that there's seat 2 in Meridian. So Joe Borton, Hunter Wolf. Then seat 4, Treg Burnt, Adam Nelson. And Treg is the incumbent in that one. He's been in city council for a while, right?
I'm gonna break in. We have preliminary results.
Oh,
here.
okay.
So I hate to be that guy.
We'll come back.
But let's just look. So these are absentee, and it's just 3.3% of turnout so far. So very early numbers. So don't take too much out of this. But here's what we got. Laura Messler is leading in District 1 with 52% of the vote over Lucy Willits. In Council District 3, Lisa Sanchez out to a big early lead. We've actually got 4% of turnout here, and she's got almost more than a 2-to-1 lead over Greg Mcmillan, again, really early. District 5, Holly Woodings with a solid lead, 56% of the vote. Katie Fight in second with 22%. Steve Madden and Crispin Gravatt are trailing. I'm just going to go through the list here. Garden City, which we've done some reporting on, but we haven't looked at. We have 5% turnout. We basically just have some absentee and some early so far, and it is a dead heat. John Evans is 1 vote ahead of Hannah Ball.
Of course, it's early, but still,
very
that
early.
Is neck and neck.
You know, Garden City. So the city council seats in Garden City are interesting because it's a pick 2 situation, and then I believe that the people who win on the council are going to pick another one. Is that correct, Margaret? But it can be anybody. It's not just somebody who won. Is that yes or no?
Can you say the question again?
Well, we'll come back to that. This isn't the time for that. I apologize. So John McCrosty and Bill Jacobs are slightly ahead. Teresa Jorgensen and Greta Moore. Everybody's right in the ballpark there, so really close. In Meridian for City Council seat 2, Joe Borton, out to just a monster-sized lead.
Yeah.
There, the incumbent. Seat 4, Treg Burnt. You burnt. He is, sorry, all my staff members are like at the door, is out to a big lead. I think he'd appreciate that joke, so I don't mean to be flippant. Luke Kavanagh, the incumbent, he's out to a big lead over Mike Hahn and Scott Garbarino. So those are our early results. Any initial, these are so early, it's hard to talk about this, but I remember when we did this last year, and Meredith will remember this, Diana Laciando was out to a pretty big early lead. And ultimately lost. So we can't take too much from this, but some results.
Yeah, I have a theory on early results, and I don't know. I mean, we'll see. But I think that people who vote early are people who have made their plan to vote weeks ago, absentee voting early. And I think that they can sometimes be the most educated voters because they've really taken time to come up with a voting plan. And those numbers can definitely switch the other way, I think, when the rest of the votes come in. It'll be really interesting to see how it progresses. Margaret, were you about to say something?
I'm so sorry. I don't want to be like a bull in the china shop interrupting people.
She's just excited.
No.
Trust me.
It is
I know Margaret.
Like who's going to start talking? Something that we've seen consistently nationwide and in local races is that people who vote absentee, especially after the coronavirus, tend to trend liberal. And so you really see that in the West Boise district, where Laura Messler is ahead. Now, granted that, and I don't know how well you guys can see that on the screen, but that is an extremely low turnout number. And we are very early. And so people who vote early and who not just vote early, but vote absentee tend to vote liberal, especially because it's coronavirus. They're worried about going inside, going in person. Whereas people who lean conservative, they're not going to be as concerned about standing in a long waiting line at their polling place to go cast their vote. And so I'm going to disagree with Meredith a little bit, that the voters who vote early and who vote absentee are more educated. I don't think they're necessarily any more educated. I just think that they tend to drift left. And so it would not surprise me if we see some of the same results that we saw in 2020, where we saw the candidates on the left come out to a massive lead, and then that starts to creep up.
So let's talk about this. This is the early results for the sewer bond. This is as close to citywide as we're going to get tonight. As Margaret reported really well, the West Boise Sewer District doesn't vote, and you can actually see that. I think I can zoom in. There's this weird little slice here in the map. It doesn't actually zoom, where they don't vote. But, so this is close to citywide, 3,100 early voting ballots, and it is far and away 86.5% in favor. So that's a very significant early lead. All the caveats that we've said here are true, but boy, that is a big early lead.
Do you guys think because the districting this year that we'll see a much lower turnout than we often see? I talked to a bunch of people who didn't realize, I heard them say, my district is not up for vote this time, and so I don't have any plan to vote. They hadn't even really considered that the water bond also needs to be voted on. Have you guys experienced that? Are you expecting low turnout?
I think it's going to be really, and I feel like I'm being the super boring person on this panel who's like refusing to take a position on anything. But I think it's really hard to say because we're in a completely different political position than we were in 2017. 2017 was a sleepy election, very low turnout. But that's because I would say the political mood in the city was extremely sleepy. I mean, I've heard stories about city council meetings being done in 5 minutes because no one came. And then the switch flipped. In 2018, when we had the stadium, when we had the library, it was like the political fire just went whoop. And all of a sudden, every issue is controversial. Growth is controversial. Housing affordability is controversial. And so now that we're in the districts, I don't think we can even make a comparison right now between, what turnout's going to look like, because functionally we're in a completely different political ecosystem than we were 4 years ago.
Yeah, I agree with that. And, it's funny because I started BoiseDev in 2016 as kind of a part-time thing, and nothing was controversial. And then Margaret and I have talked a lot about this. It felt like a switch. I remember the project. It was the CVS that was proposed. I'm sure Meredith remembers this along State Street. And I remember writing the story and being like, oh, they want to build a CVS. Cool. You'll notice there's no CVS along State Street because in large part,
neighborhood one
rose up and said, we don't want this. And the other thing that they made, and it was the first time we really started to talk about affordable housing in a meaningful way, the project was going to take out some affordable housing units. And we saw this like lightning strike change. And things have frankly gotten progressively, and Meredith can speak to this, progressively.
What was so interesting about that to me is the neighborhood, that's like the West downtown, the West End Neighborhood Association.
Yeah.
And what was so interesting to me is they spent the next 2 years working with the city and kind of working within the system to rezone that part of their neighborhood and protect it. And from my perspective, they really used the system in their favor, kind of played within the rules to accomplish exactly what it was that they were hoping to accomplish. And I guess I'm surprised every time you hear this really passionate criticism from neighborhoods or from individuals. I would love to see that kind of organization. And again, working within the system to, make it work for you. It's easy to criticize, I guess, but much more interesting to work towards solution.
We've got a viewer question. If you have a question, if you're on Facebook, you can ask it. Mark asks, were any of the candidates in favor of increasing impact fees to limit growth? Margaret, do you know that?
So I don't think that I've heard anyone phrase it of wanting to increase impact fees to specifically limit growth. The conversation that I've heard is increasing impact fees to have growth pay for itself, as opposed to using it as a way to block projects. I would say that no one really addressed it in a major way this year. I didn't hear anyone advocating to increase it or to decrease it, although there were a lot of people raising questions against the sewer bond, wondering if the city should use other sorts of fees. So no, the conversations that I heard around limiting growth were not related to impact fees. They were related to zoning. They were zoning changes and, just, I'm going to say more vague comments about we need to slow down growth, we need to limit growth, which I would assume come from just turning the projects down at the dais and just saying, no, we're not going to do this rezone, we're not going to do this project. And the peril that comes with that, which I am going to be very interested to see how it plays out if the council flips with these challengers, is that in Idaho, case law very heavily favors developers and private property rights. If the city council can't get up there and turn down any project that it likes, because if they do, that developer more than likely can often take the project to judicial review and get the project approved. And so instead, we've seen the city do things where they do a little negotiating. They try to shave off a floor of a project, redesign it in some way, come to an agreement with the neighbors, as opposed to just saying no and running the risk of having project go to that court process, and then the project as proposed gets approved.
Should we look at these West Ada?
Yeah, let's take a look at those. Let's see. We have the West Ada School Trustees, Zone 1. And let's see.
Looks like Lorianne Frazier's out. It's really close. Again, these are absentee and early. My wife's parents live in Meridian. We were out there, and Lorianne Frazier's sign budget had to be huge. I mean, I don't mean to be flippant, but there was so many signs for her. We haven't covered these races. We don't do school boards, but I know people are maybe interested.
Sure, yeah.
And here is the West Ada Trustee Zone 2. Anita Beckman out to a strong lead over Angie Redford.
60.
Yeah, so we'll watch those as well tonight. Meredith, you had some information, and you can say where you heard it on when we're going to get updates.
Yeah, I heard on NPR this morning, I heard that they said the first update was going to come at 9 and then updates every 15 minutes after that until the results were in. So hopefully we'll see another update here shortly.
So we're going to have this nice little rhythm every 15 minutes.
Nice. We'll get some more
numbers.
More results.
And we're at 9:14. So Phil McGrain and crew, we're going to hold you to whatever you said on Boise State Public Radio.
Count down. Speaking of West Ada, I know the where is it on there? The supplemental levy.
Oh yeah, let's look at that.
That was a big one too. I believe $14 million per year for 2 years, if I'm not mistaken.
And is that a school facilities levy? I think it is.
Yes,
yeah.
I want to say.
Yeah, this one's close. Now, levies, I think it's just a simple majority for a levy. Margaret is the expert on those things. She's nodding her head yes.
Okay.
So it's an easier bar. We don't have that 2/3 bond amount. It's always so funny to see the West Ada School District and the way it just kind of like wraps around everything.
Mm-hmm.
So going to be interesting to see if that passes. You know, those schools out there are always needing more money. That district grows so fast.
So fast.
Are we up to 6 public high schools, 7 In Meridian, it's a lot.
I'm not sure, but
I mean,
yeah,
I grew up in Boise
it's a
when we
lot.
had 3 in Boise and Meridian High, and those were the high schools. And then Eagle High was like a big deal. I'm sounding like the old person again, so stop. But we've just seen so much growth in Meridian. And, you know, we, Margaret and I went back and forth with somebody on Twitter, and it's somebody who might be watching, about why we call it the growth vote. And it's because it's the animating issue that runs through all these races locally. And yeah, we're starting to, like Margaret said really well, we're starting to see some social issues and some of those things creep in. But education isn't really a major issue for city politics because the school board is separate. Even the roads aren't. So you've got these very specific things, and it's a lot of what Meredith deals with every day, a lot of land use, planning issues. And, you know, the point a few minutes ago about, you know, if a city council says we don't want to do a project and votes it down, Idaho is a strong private property rights state, and I think you'd start to see a lot of things go to judicial review if that were to be the case.
Yeah,
Okay,
it
should
will
we see
be. I
that?
think one
Okay.
thing that's interesting, you know, we have a lot of candidates that have very little municipal experience. And so it will be really interesting if some of these people, you know, become our local lawmakers, and to see how they work within the system to accomplish things, you know.
Well, and this is kind of behind the scenes when Margaret and I talk about this stuff, but, you know, Elaine Clegg, Council President Clegg, is kind of the person who's like, I can only vote for what's in the Constitution and what's state law. And I'm like, whoever gets elected, you know, she's going to go to coffee with them or lunch or whatever and be like, you're going to take an oath and here's what you have to do. And, you know, I can just hear Council President Clegg sort of going through some of those motions on that. And being in office, I think sometimes changes what a candidate might say and what they end up doing too.
I think that's
Well,
great.
I just
look
peeked
at
at the.
sorry, Gretchen, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I mean, I think we've seen that a little bit with Lisa Sanchez. She's, I think, you know, kind of, I don't know if matured is the right word, but she's really, you know, come a long way, I think, in her years on city council, where she's maybe learned kind of when is the, you know, is the appropriate time to interject and give opinions, and when to hold back a little bit more, certainly than I'd seen her, you know, a few years ago in the same sort of roles.
Ultimately,
No. Mine was kind of a non-thing to say. I was just going to say, because we don't want to leave out Canyon County. I did just check that webpage for some results, and nothing there. One thing I do want to watch there is the race for Nampa Mayor. Also, Caldwell Mayor as well. Those two should be interesting for sure.
Yeah, former state legislator John McGee is running for that race. He is a current city council member in Caldwell. He's running against 3 other candidates. He's probably got the best name ID, I think, across the Treasure Valley.
I would agree.
He got into quite a bit of trouble for a series of events, probably 10 years ago, including, and I want to be careful with my words here, but some inappropriate relations with a staff member. And then there was a kind of a bizarre incident, I think, where he was arrested for DUI and had like stolen a trailer. This was a long time ago, so I apologize if my memory's faulty. But he ran for city council again and got elected, and now he's running for mayor. And so that's going to be a race to watch. And there's been a lot of energy out in Caldwell. Garrett Nancolis, I believe, is the mayor of Caldwell and has been the mayor. There goes the lights again. Gretchen, take over. I'm going to go wave the lights back down.
Second time this has happened to us.
I think we had a comment, somebody said, like, you know, do we mean that Clegg will teach them to manipulate the system? And I mean, I'm a firm believer that you have to know the rules to play the game. And if you want to be effective in any of these roles, you really have to understand the legal implications and your legal parameters to be able to make any kind of decision. So to me, it is, I mean, you can call it, you know, you can call it what you want, I guess, but you have to understand the rules in order to be effective.
ultimately, everything that city council does when they're voting on land use policy has to be rooted in code. You cannot say no to a project because you don't like it.
And I will add, just while I can, that's the same for planning and zoning too. And that is something that is just so misunderstood by voters, I think, whether it's planning and zoning or city council, but it has to be supported by code. And it doesn't mean that code can't be ultimately changed at some point down the line by city council, but it's not something that can be done project by project.
You know, I've had neighbors before say, we're really against this. What do we do? And, you know, I'll tell them I can't, you know, help them with that. But I can tell them what I've seen, which is neighborhood groups who are organized and who know the law and who make arguments based on the law are more successful than people who go in and complain about their view, which is not enshrined in code in Idaho, or complain about, you know, people can see down into my window from a balcony. Those things don't work because there's no law against it. But you are starting to see some of these groups get a little bit savvier about understanding what they actually can make an argument on.
I feel like Margaret has covered that a lot with the various neighborhood groups and all of that.
Yeah, I mean, what you really see is the people. I mean, Dawn is exactly right. The people who go to council and know exactly what they can, you know, what they can say, and you know what they can argue for and what they can't. They're the most successful. And what you really see that I would say in my years of watching is neighborhoods that go in and are like, let's negotiate. I'm here to negotiate. Can we get the project redesigned for a certain way? I think the Northwest Neighborhood Association, they had a project up along Old Hill Road Parkway called Prominence, that they went in and they are staunchly opposed to that project. And they have taken a judicial review. They're going to take it to the Idaho Supreme Court. But whenever they were there talking about that, you know, that project, city council was, you know, I remember them that back and forth saying, okay, well, what can you live with? You know, and what trying to parse out exactly what they can do, and what the neighbors can really tolerate. And they came back with the final project that was approved, and we'll see what happens at the Supreme Court challenge, was a project that had a piece of it was carved out for open space. We had a lateral that the city ordered to remain open. They lowered some of the density. It was, I mean, the neighbors still hate this project, but it is a much less dense project. It is a different project than it was when they first went in. And if the city council had just said no to the whole thing, it was very likely that the developer would have taken it to judicial review and won. And
Meredith didn't drop off screen because she's had to vote on this. She had to fix a watch band, so I didn't want people to think that because she's
that would have been
she went away.
poor timing. My watch band got stuck on my desk. You know, live broadcast is stressful.
I know, right? Okay, so Phil McGrain and company at Ada County Elections, we have not had a 15-minute update. We are still looking at absentee and early voting. So we're really hoping for that first big batch. I remember in the old days, folks, like the old days, Ada County was notoriously slow, and we had some election nights go till like 1 o'clock. We're not going to stay on the air till 1 o'clock here. We may go till 10:30 because we're still pretty early, but they've gotten quicker, but I'd like to see some results. So this is my little me giving prayer for some results.
If it's until 1 a.m, you would see me sleeping up here on this live cam.
I had dinner with my wife before this, and it's, you know, all of us worked our normal days. And she's like, oh, I'm so tired. And I'm like, I'm not tired. And she's like, really? I'm like, no, I really am, but I have to tell myself I'm not.
Yeah, exactly.
Or I won't be able to do this.
You gotta roll through. Got to get the power of democracy to keep you going.
Autumn, so I just think we should hear more from you. I mean, you talked to most of these candidates, and you attended that debate. What do you sense that voters are wanting to know? What do you think they're voting on?
I think they're voting for growth, and I think a lot of them are just what I'm seeing on Twitter and what I saw during the forums and stuff is most of the people that were talking on social media and during these various forums and asking questions or submitting them on Facebook or whatnot were all voting for the incumbents, who, like I said, are sticking to their plans they have already laid out for growth. And there are also quite a few people when you look on, honestly, it depends on the page you're looking. So if I'm looking on pages for conservatives, they're talking about these new people that are talking about pausing growth. They're taking a different approach.
You know, I'm going to be interested. We haven't even talked about this yet. 2 years away from election Mageddon 2023, when and I talk about this all the time, and I hope that all of the wonderful people you see on the screen here will join us in 2 years. We're going to have all 6 city council seats in Boise, all 6 city council seats in Meridian, the Meridian mayor and the Boise mayor, all up for election all at once. And I think this election's got some attention. Those elections will get a lot of attention, and we'll see who chooses to run against Boise Mayor Lauren McLean, who runs against Meridian Mayor Robert Simison. Mm-hmm. And what's interesting is there's all this, we're talking about these city council seats. It's for 2 years, and that's it. It's usually 4. And so these people will have 2 years. And then we have this funny circumstance where you have Margaret, you can tell me better, but are Lisa, Jimmy, and Patrick and Elaine, not to use all their first names, but are they all in the same district?
No. So I'm trying to remember exactly how it fell.
I just know we have a bunch that we could have incumbents versus incumbents, right?
Yes, for sure. So Councilmember Bajent and Councilmember Sanchez are in the same district. Councilmember Clegg and Councilmember Halliburton are in the same district. And then, of course, you're going to have Councilmember Holly Woodings. But again, for 2023, we're going to rewrite the districts. These
so
people
the districts
are pretty close to each other, so there's a really good chance they're going to still be in the same districts, but the game is going to change.
Yeah, and I think people would probably be upset, honestly, if each of those incumbents were somehow in a separate district, because you'd have to write some really funny districts to make, because Councilmember Bajent and Councilmember Sanchez, if Councilmember Sanchez is reelected, they live is it 5 or 6 blocks apart?
They're very close.
Real close. Yeah. So
something.
Okay.
Sorry, go back.
Go ahead, Gretchen.
Oh no. Go ahead.
Something I just want to note real quick about what Autumn was saying about growth. I think it's really interesting about we're seeing conservative candidates trending on the side of pausing growth, because typically when you look at the Republican Party platform, they are pro private enterprise, they are pro capitalism, not fewer regulations. They want to say yes to business. They want to say yes to development. They want to say yes to all of those sorts of things. And, that's sort of really ingrained in their party platform, is that business should do what business wants to do without government interfering. And ultimately, the ultimate government interference is a city council turning down a project. And I think it's and slowing growth. That to me, that seems sort of antithetical to their support of business and their support of capitalism, and in a unregulated as unregulated state as possible. That's not to say the Democrats are against capitalism, and so it's really interesting to me to see that dynamic of part of that conservative party breaking off into wanting to say, okay, we don't want regulations. We want to go further to the right, but we still want to say no to all of these developer projects. And I think that's a dynamic in the Republican Party that is really playing out in the Meridian race. And I am still intrigued in the conservatives in Boise of exactly where that mindset comes from and how it's going to manifest itself if someone in these conservative, who are on these conservative end of the spectrum is going, if they're elected, how they would govern, because that's sort of contrary.
Gretchen's going to do some Canyon County here, I think.
Margaret, sorry to cut you short.
Up.
We just got some initial results from the races in Canyon County. So let's take a look at that here. And I know I was reading West Ada.
So those are confusing because they combine.
Right, it stretches in a little bit. But let's take a look. Let's see that Caldwell Mayor. So, okay.
We got
Jerome.
Yeah, so I've got Wagoner out to a decent lead, 47 and a half. John McGee in second with almost 25%.
Okay.
So that's pretty interesting. You got a couple council seats out there too. we have a Nampa Mayor. Debbie can't.
Yeah, I'd like to. Oh, okay. I see that one. So it looks so far 88% Kling and then 11% for Smith.
So we'll keep watching that too. Should we take a quick little break and hopefully get some more results in Ada?
Yeah, let's take a quick break and then we'll get right back to it.
Okay, we'll be back in 1 minute.
There's no place quite like Idaho. That's why Regents Blue Shield of Idaho is constantly reimagining the healthcare experience, tailoring it to fit the needs of local families and businesses. Rooted here since 1946, we're shaping the future with cutting-edge digital solutions, Idaho-based customer service, and unparalleled access to top doctors. That's the Regents difference you can count on. We get you because we are you.
Okay, we're back.
We
We're
are
just drinking
back.
their water. Okay, we switched spots. I think our Wi-Fi dropped for a second. Oh, I can move us. Oh, I learned a new trick.
Yeah.
I learned a new trick. That's
Nice.
Good. That's good. Okay.
Well, we're still waiting on those results in the Ada County races.
Should we go through them again? If
Yeah.
people have
Let's
just
take a
joined
little
us?
look at it.
So let's look at Boise again. So these are absentee and early voting. We do not have any day of results. We're at 9:31 here. Polls closed 90 minutes ago, so it's curious. Laura Messler is leading in City Council District 1, 52% to 40. District 3.
Sanchez clearly in the lead with 63%. Then Mcmillan with 30.
Yep, and then Santa Cruz, Cernick, and Domini behind in 5. Oh, you know what? I should put this up so people could see it. I apologize. We had a lot going on. Oh, you know what? We lost our. Yeah,
I would
so our
say-
Wi-Fi dropped here, which is what caused all that to. Go ahead, Meredith, while I get this back
Well,
up.
I was just going to say, kind of in regards to Margaret, what you were saying about the Republican Party backing the anti-growth movement here. I think, voters are just really afraid of change, and things are changing really fast, and I don't think it matters what side of the aisle you're on. That's something that I think people on both sides are feeling, but maybe they just have different ideas on how to address it,
I think that's a really good observation, because we see that pushback against development, against growth on the left as well, particularly in the far reaches of Northwest Boise. Katie Fight is really aligned with that group. I think that, and she's a Democrat, or she's a liberal. I'm not sure of her party affiliation, but she's been long associated with public lands issues. And other things and the Ada County Republican Party has been running mailers against her. So no, I think you're absolutely right. There is that anxiety about growth, and there is that political tendency to say, let's just say no and let's stop it. And there's a lot.
It was the Wayne Ritchie platform, right? 2 years ago when he ran for mayor, his whole platform was like, we should make Boise less great. Let's stop investing in the parks and let's do things to and boy, and he got some votes, not a lot, but he did get some votes.
Now that you say that, what was the purpose behind that? Why did he want to make Boise less wet so people stop moving here?
Yeah, I think his idea was, if we make it not as nice, people won't move here. And
I totally forgot about that.
I think what's interesting is it came off of Mayor Beater and the city of Boise's mission statement. I think Meredith can correct me at the time, was to make Boise the most livable city in the country, and that's not what it is anymore, right? It's what is it now, Meredith? Margaret's going to go off camera for a second.
Gosh, it's city for everybody.
City for everybody, right? And so that kind of old approach was this idea of like, oh, let's make this so livable. And I think his thing was like, no, let's make it less livable.
Yeah.
Then people will stop moving here,
Right.
and we'll stop having problems. And I don't.
And something we hear a lot is a lot of criticism of Mayor Beater was that, and some of his allies, is that they oversold Boise, they overpromoted Boise, and that everyone would not be moving here if they would not. Everyone would not be moving here if they did not have basically created an ad campaign and tried to convince, to celebrate the city. And I'm really interested in sort of like, I like to think about alternate realities sometimes of like, what if, we made different choices, where would we be? And I'm not necessarily convinced if the city had not promoted itself, that people wouldn't move here anyway, because people would find, relatively lower housing, good quality of life, and word of mouth. And so that's something I think about a lot is, is that sort of promotion of Boise, the most livable city in the country, topping all these lists? Did that really lead to what we had? Was that really the driving force, or were there other things underpinning that would have happened anyway?
I'm a marketing guy, right? Awareness never hurts. And I'm not saying that is the right or wrong approach, but, for a while, that's all that we talked about. And Meredith, you used to work for Economic Partnership, is that right? And that's a lot of what they did. Yeah.
Yeah, it was just, really it was reporting those top 10 lists and, letting businesses know that we're landing on those lists that everybody wants to be on. And, there's a lot of argument as to why it's good to be on lists like that, as far as your economy goes and job availability and things like that. So, it can be argued both ways for sure.
And I'll drop a little bit of reporting that I haven't even told Margaret about yet that we're going to probably work on. I hear that there's maybe a significant employer that's moving into Boise. If anybody knows anything, say it right here, or you can email us.
Let us know.
But I hear there's something afoot there. And so, I'm curious what that is, because I was talking to somebody today, and I can't think of the last time we got like a really big new employer in Boise. We've had a lot of homegrown ones get bigger, but as far as somebody coming in, it's
if Boise is the Valley, we had Amazon come in just a couple of years ago and is now one of the top employers in the state, after just opening some of their distribution centers in the Valley.
Yeah, that's true. They've been a major employer ever since they got here.
So I'm looking on Twitter to see if we've got any good
questions.
Any update from Ada County elections, because so I'm just looking at the Twitter feed, and they posted a while ago, a half an hour ago, and said there's a delay with the initial results, and then 3 minutes later they said initial results are now on our website. Well, we've had the initial results now for 37 minutes, and we've not had one scintilla of additional information. And when you are trying to do live TV without any new data,
Cover the results, it's a little hard.
It's a little hard. We plan to go till 10 o'clock.
Am I going to have to bust out my clarinet and start playing some music for everybody?
You might have to provide some entertainment.
Margaret, your friend and mine, BJ Rain, said this was really entertaining, even if you're not a political junkie. That would change his mind.
Okay.
Or maybe not. I don't know. You know BJ better than I do. Maybe he would like some clarinet.
I don't know. I'm not very good.
You could try it.
I was doing some get out the vote calls today. Just, trying to keep my finger on the pulse. And it is, I know, it was pretty interesting. They're always, if you haven't ever done get out the vote calls, you should, because it's amazing. You get some really funny stories. It's easy not to take anything personally, but, and you have some great successes when you connect with somebody. And can help them figure out a voting plan and things like that. But it really is, across the board, it's growth, and it's, it's almost like this, it's kind of a sadness, I think, for what Boise used to be. But I would love to see, I think one of the problems I've had with a lot of the candidates we're seeing is, I think, Margaret, you sort of touched on this, is like people want to know what their party affiliation is, or where they stand on national issues and things like that. But really what matters to me, and I think what should matter, is what will their agendas be in city council? And, we haven't really seen tons of initiatives coming out of city council over the last couple of years being pushed forward from city council, I guess. And I think that's difficult when you get an experienced council members in there, because they have to, it takes them a few years to kind of get their feet wet and see what's going on. And so with that short, with the 2 year, is it 2 years until the next election now? So with the 2 year span, I mean, that's a pretty short amount of time to learn the ropes, make any kind of impact, I guess, and then be ready to campaign again. I mean, really, you're campaigning again in basically a year.
And I don't mean to make light, but TJ Thompson has been on the city council for 12 years, Margaret.
Yep.
Wow.
I wanted to know why he left or why he's not seeking.
Yeah, so Margaret can tell us that in a second, but TJ, just this year, Councilmember Thompson got through some bills that he really wanted to get done around the animal code.
Yeah.
And he's been talking about this as long as I've been covering council, because it took him a while. And so what was your question for Margaret on TJ?
Yeah, I was just, Margaret, I wanted to ask you, because he has been on city council for a while, why isn't he seeking re-election?
He said he did not want to seek re-election because he wanted to spend more time with his family. He has a daughter who is in elementary school, and I think his sense was he just really wanted to be there for her. I remember him sharing in his announcement that when he told his daughter that he was not going to run again, she was cheering because she was so excited to have more time with her dad. And so I think that this is city council is a hard job. It is long hours, late nights, and especially campaigning. You have to stay away from your family for long periods of time. And there's a lot of people who they do it for a couple terms, and then they say, you know what, I got to go hang out with my kids, or I want to go hang out with my wife. You hear that a lot when people say, well, my wife and I are empty nesters now, we want to travel. Or my husband and I are empty nesters and we want to go, do all these sorts of things. And because whenever you have to be at city council every week, you don't have that freedom to say, let's hop in the car and go to the Grand Canyon.
Right. And that's on top of your normal job. Yeah, it's a lot.
Ian McGrady asked on LinkedIn, I didn't know people would leave comments on LinkedIn, said, just tuned in. What's the high level overview of the election? Turning more red versus more blue? The high level overview is we don't have enough results to know right now.
Not sure yet.
We're hoping to get more. In Ada County, we just have absentee and early voting. We have no day of numbers, which is strange. I'm going to say at this point, it's a little weird. And I don't know, Margaret, if you have anybody you might be able to text to get a little bit of insight
issues or something
on that. But we could work the phones on that a little bit because that's strange. And in Canyon County, we've got some early results, but those races are less red and blue, frankly, in Canyon County, because I think everybody out there, for the most part, is Republican. Margaret, I'm just going to read to you out loud. She asks if we can't do a long break because I only have one spot. So if you want to unplug for a minute and go check that, it'd be fine, and we'll carry on. Okay, she's going to drop off. We have a group chat. That's how we do that. So let's talk about Meridian and Autumn. Autumn, we're not getting to you enough because we've been blabbing about Boise.
I have seen. Let me pull up my little sheet here. It's Treg Byrne. I've seen his signs everywhere, probably the most. And I've lived in Meridian. I would say I'm a somewhat new resident, like a little less than 2 years. Off the top of your head, how long has he been on the council, or if you don't know specifically, but it's been some time, right?
It's 4 years, and then he's been the president for 2 years.
I see. Okay, I apologize. I should know that. But it seems like he's definitely been campaigning pretty hard.
Yeah, I think he has a lot of supporters from what I'm seeing. And while I have you guys, I wanted to add about the growth when we were talking about that earlier. Han and Adam, about the stopping growth, I think it's more they're thinking, let's pause growth so we can look at it in a common sense way and be more transparent with the citizens. They want to get more public feedback is what they talk to me about a lot.
And I think it's important to say that they get a lot of public feedback now, right? So sometimes we hear candidates say that.
Yeah.
There's a process involved. And so sometimes I hear that we need more public feedback, or we need to be more, transparent, or whatever it is. We have a reporter who's dedicated to it. You're looking at her right there. So sometimes I think that's a common thing that's said that maybe doesn't hold as much water. Yeah,
no, that's a good point. And Autumn, you mentioned before too, Mike Hahn running for seat 6. He described himself as a no nonsense conservative. You said some of the other candidates, they use that same verbiage, no nonsense. That seems to be kind of a thing in the Meridian races.
Yeah, with the two conservative candidates, Hahn and Nelson. Yeah, it is. I mean,
I would actually just I think it's important. All the candidates in that race, I would say, are conservative. You just have some
Oh,
candidates
yeah.
who are further to the right.
Sure.
Sure, yeah. It's a Republican race over in Meridian. But yeah, both of Nelson and Hahn have used that kind of lingo when they talk to me. They use it when they are campaigning. And I think a lot of it comes from them kind of working together. Anything I've seen from them on social media, they're together. They're working. They were campaigning on the streets together. They were posting on Instagram together. So I think that is why we're seeing a lot of that same kind of verbiage.
Okay, I gotcha. That makes sense.
So I'm answering some questions on Twitter from people. That's why I'm looking down here. Somebody says, it looks like Sanchez wins by a landslide. It's really important to note that we don't have any day of vote yet.
Yeah, this is all absentee and early voting.
And we're doing 46 minutes of live TV on just certainly
Early.
I just
early
gave
results.
Gretchen a look of panic. She's done a lot more TV than I have. And so I'm like, what are we going to talk about now?
On 5% voter turnout.
Yeah, right. So it does. So if people are tuning in, or if they just looked up the results online and they're like, it's 9:45, we should have results. And you're like, Lisa Sanchez won on a landslide. We don't know yet because we are still waiting for any ballots from today. Margaret, were you able to rustle anything up, or were you just charging up your computer?
No, I connected with the PIO for the 80 County Clerk's office. She said that they're having no issues scanning the ballots and getting them in from the precincts, but they're having problems uploading them to the website. And she said that they should see more results in about 5 minutes, but those delays should persist kind of through the evening, although we should have final results before midnight. So things are rolling pretty slow tonight. And I think a lot of these races are going to be tight, so we might be in for a late night, a sleepover, election type sleepover vibe.
If you're not signed up for Idaho First yet, Gretchen Carson's amazing morning newsletter that comes out every day at 6 a.m., we will at least have a link to results.
Yes.
We'll see how long all of us
there.
last tonight, but we'll have that in the morning. So if you're tuning in and you're tired of hearing us prattle on, we'll have it there, but we're going to go. Margaret said we're going to keep going. Margaret said we should have some results in like 5 minutes.
5 minutes or so.
So we're hoping that that'll maybe give us some trend with that day of voting.
I think, Don,
Yes.
one of the things you guys were just talking about in Meridian, voters being interested in the kind of municipal transparency and public communication. And I think then, Don, what you had mentioned about a couple of years ago, there was a tipping point in Boise. And I think that that's kind of when Boise started to learn the hard way that it's really important to bring the residents along on the journey of
the city.
Right. Of keeping them informed. We saw that with the bike park particularly. And then I think it was back to back with the bike park, the ballpark, and the library. And people started really holding people in city accountable.
And this is how BoiseDev started, really. We covered and Margaret, when she was the Idaho Press, we covered what was happening in City Hall. We both did it in our own way, but I saw somebody use this acronym on social media recently, and it resonated with me, which was, for a while, the approach in Boise was what they called DAD, which is decide, announce, and defend. And I was like, that's what it was. They were making these decisions, and then they were rolling them out with a lot of fanfare. I remember the library, and Margaret, I think you did this too. They had these sessions where they said, hey, you get 45 minutes to come in. We got something to tell you about, and come in and talk to us. Okay, cool. So I show up not knowing what the topic is, and it's like, we've got a new plan for a library, and the lights went out again. We'll fix it in a second.
Right, as soon as you
the sensors behind us. Gretchen will go fix us. Hey, the lights working. And they said, so they sat us down and they said, okay, look at this plan for the library. What questions do you have? And I remember being like, it looks like a library. Cool. And then I think Margaret got this and I didn't. I remember being really mad when we used to compete. This is why I hired her, because it's more fun to work with her. The plans didn't have the log cabin literary center. It was just gone. And I didn't see that because I didn't know what I was going to be talking about. And I was like, oh man. And of course that was kind of the central issue for a while on the library project, cost, but was what they were going to do with the library. we're not seeing that as much now. And I sat through a presentation on the zoning code rewrite last week, and it's amazing how much feedback they are going through. Who's got a cat?
Just
call it out at this point. Is it Autumn? Does Autumn have a cat?
No.
It's
No,
Margaret's cat.
Is it
it's not my cat.
when you adopted?
She has never crashed a Zoom before. And then she does it when we're live in front of the whole world.
So cute.
Sorry, Don,
No,
go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. I was like, we got to talk about it. So, it's been a change. And that's not to say one approach is better or not, but I think one is dictated by where we are. Autumn, I'm going to mute you. Maybe I don't actually know how. There we go.
Well, I mean, it really is. I think that largely that's a big reason why Mayor Beater was voted out, I think, because people were feeling like they hadn't been brought along in the process. And so I think Boise's gotten better at that in the last couple of years. And certainly there's always more work that can be done. But I know that the community engagement department over there works really hard.
Yeah, the flip side to this and is McGurdio Park. And this happened this summer. And the city had been working on it quietly for a while. They had a developer approach them with this trade, and the public caught wind of it and didn't like it. And Margaret, I remember you told me, I think, some public records about the city seemed to kind of think this was going to be something people liked. Was that your recollection of what you saw in records? McGurdio?
Well, what I saw was initially, what happened is this project came out slowly because they called neighborhood associations in the area and it leaked on social media. But then when I filed public records, I went in and I found a draft of a joint press release between the developer and the city that was going to announce this, again, to great fanfare. But clearly they didn't get that far because before they could announce it, the neighborhood associations had posted about this on Facebook. It started a firestorm. I was writing about it. The Statesman was writing about it. The Idaho Press was writing about it. And I think that was that feeling of, this is me just purely guessing, was probably, oh, wait a minute, this is a lot more of a controversy than we expected. I'm guessing that they thought there was going to be some opposition from people who lived outside the city limits, and that was going to be it. But really, that issue turned into the story of the summer. That's what I did during Hot Girl Summer, is I wrote about
Perfect way to spend it.
That is what I did, and I wrote about McGurdio Park. Don edited McGurdio Park. I mean, we wrote much about.
That's what when I asked Meredith if she would do this again. I walked up to her on the dais at that hearing because Autumn actually covered it because Margaret was out of town. But I went to take a picture and I went up to Meredith and I go, "How you doing?" And she's like,
Well,
I asked her to do this panel, right?
Gosh.
What do you need
from me? I can't comment on the project.
No, yeah. See, we're really friendly on the air here tonight, but I can't wait to hit you with a hard question again. It'll happen.
But it is, I mean, first of all, I look forward to this. I do look forward to this because it just feels like sitting around with pals talking about local government, with people that are, did we get an update?
We've got some numbers. We're going to go to the numbers because I'm tired of talking about Meredith at a city council meeting. Let's roll through this. Now, what's weird here is this still says 0 of 17 precincts.
I was going to say, that's what threw me off.
And that's what threw me off, but we have some election night numbers.
Okay.
So we're going to go through these. Why don't we just alternate? I'll do the first one.
Sure, go ahead.
Boise City Council District 1, Lucy Willits is leading, 49.7%. I'm trying not to talk fast because I'm excited. Laura Messler in second at 41.3%. David Jones with about 9% of the vote.
And then Boise City Council District 3, Lisa Sanchez still big lead, 63.3%. Then Greg Mcmillan with 32%. Trailing behind, we got Cernick 3%, and then Dominic 1.7.
So this is interesting because you can look by individual area. We're still early, but that Northwest Boise vote coming out strong for Greg Mcmillan. He also got a strong vote in the Highlands. And then in the area, what is that? That is like North Garden City, this block right here. I'm not sure how to describe that. But then Lisa Sanchez right now leading in the bulk of and maybe that we're putting too much fine a point on this, but boy, some of these districts, like not a lot of votes here, but like this one right here, this precinct, Lisa Sanchez with 114 votes, Greg Mcmillan with 20. So that trend may not hold, but with our very preliminary numbers here, we've got 37,000 ballots in of 26,000 registered voters in District 3. I don't know how big turnout is going to be. That's 14%. I believe, and Margaret maybe looked this up too, I believe turnout in 2017 was like 18%.
Turnout
might be a
top
little
20.
Did it? Okay. So we may get ahead of that, but that was citywide, correct?
Yes. That was Ada County.
Yeah, okay. So, we may get ahead of that, but it is interesting because you're starting to see maybe some trend. District 5, Holly Woodings is winning in every single precinct right now with a majority of the votes. Every single precinct but one, Katie Fight is leading here in a precinct kind of over by Boise State. So interesting. Let's look at Garden City, Gretchen.
Yeah, let's take a look at that. So John Evans, current mayor, 62% of the vote, and then Hannah Ball with 37%. So he's got a pretty decent lead there. But it's really hard to tell.
And this is, we got 36% turnout reporting right now. Again, they're saying 0 of 6 precincts.
Yeah, that's not
I'm
right, I don't think.
I'm a little confused because we have data in every precinct. Turnout, 36% turnout. There's not a lot of people that live in Garden City. There's only 7,200 ballots. But the incumbent mayor out to a big lead there. Garden City City Council, this one's tight. Gretchen, Margaret, talk about the Garden City City Council races and how there was kind of a team approach to running for mayor and council.
Yeah, I'm curious about that too, Margaret.
Yeah, so there's a different dynamic here than I've seen before. So mayoral candidate Hannah Ball, she teamed up with Representative John McCrosty and a local business owner, Greta Moore, and they said, we're going to run together. We're going to have a joint platform. We're going to work together. They talked about knocking doors together. And so they were really running to the left of the incumbents. John McCrosty was particularly outspoken about we need a non-discrimination ordinance, and they were looking at more dense development, more focus on affordable housing, just more, a little bit more of a left-leaning approach. Although it's hard to really say left versus right in such a municipal election where where you're talking about land use planning. What is liberal land use planning? What is conservative land use planning? And so I really hesitate to ascribe those labels. But really that was kind of that team approach going a little bit to the left. John Evans is a Republican, and so that's what we saw.
Okay, let's look at Margaret. We're gonna move on. Let's look at Meridian, and maybe Autumn can weigh in here. City Council seat 2.
Yeah, Joe Borton got the lead with 66%, and then Hunter trailing behind with 33%. And Autumn, Borton's the incumbent, so but this still isn't. I don't know if all the votes, but.
0 of 37 precincts, but clearly there is voting in precincts.
Right.
Yeah, and then seat 4, Trig Burnt is his lead isn't as wide as in the other race, but still that's a commanding lead. It's almost a 15-point advantage there. And then seat 6,
Luke Kavanaugh.
Luke Kavanaugh, boy, he's also out to a really strong lead by 17%. Bottom.
Yeah, and Scott Garbarina, I was told he dropped out. So
okay,
interesting.
Yeah. And sometimes these ballot deadlines sometimes are way in advance. So if a candidate drops out, they're still on the ballot. And,
right. I'm sure that's it. I think it was. Yeah. I think it was a last minute thing.
Yeah, I'm just. Okay, so we're going to go back and go through Boise. I just figured something out with their interface here, which helps. So most of these precincts, so if you can see this at home, I know it's small, these black precincts are all not reporting. So we have partial results in 5 precincts, and I'm not going to try and get into where those are because it's too complicated. But it still looks like we got a long way to go here. 12% turnout in West Boise is not insignificant so far. These municipal elections are often not high turnout affairs. And so the tricky part helped me remember that we're at 14% turnout, because since the precincts aren't updating, we're going to have to remember the turnout number to know we've got any numbers. District 3, Lisa Sanchez, again,
It's a big lead.
A big lead, but
not a lot of information.
We have 4 precincts partially reporting, and then the bulk with nothing. And so I would guess that when we mouse over these individual areas, that these are a lot of absentee and early voting numbers, because since we have precincts that aren't reporting, but they show up on the map. But again, and Margaret, I don't know if there's any reporting out there. This actually says it was updated at 9:43. I don't believe that that's actually when we saw these, but.
How about the Boise, the wastewater bond? How's that doing?
Good cue. Let's go. That's all the way down here. Yeah,
Ooh, wow.
We have a long way to go.
Yeah.
But commanding. So if the trend continues, we'll see that. And it's interesting because when we talk about this left versus right thing, levies and bonds have done really well in Boise over the last 10 years. School bonds, which need a supermajority, have passed. The Foothills levy passed twice because they passed it and there was a glitch and they had to pass it again. The open space levy. So these things pass and a lot. And what's interesting about this one that I thought is the city council said, we're going to do this. We're going to build this new infrastructure. And you, dear citizens, have a choice. You can either do a bond and your sewer rates will go up, but more slowly, or you can do no bond and your rates will go up like this. And I thought, gosh, if you're a fiscal conservative, you might look at that and vote for the bond because you want the rates not to go up as fast.
Right.
I mean, I might be thinking too much about it, but it was a different dynamic than we often see.
I think that sewer bond is also a really complicated issue because there's so many things tied up in it with growth. And, one of the arguments for it was if we vote for the bond, then that means that new people who move in are going to be paying toward the cost of these improvements. Whereas I saw a lot of people questioning, saying, why do we need this anyway? Why can't, because a third of this plan, part of this plan was to plan for new growth and to build capacity in the system for the new people coming here. And then another third of it was to address regulatory requirements and to build a water recycling system. And so I saw a lot of people raising questions and saying, especially since a developer-backed PAC was promoting promoting the bond, I saw a lot of people in both political parties saying, I don't want to vote for this because it means growth. I don't want to give the developers something that if the developers want it, then that means I'm voting no. I saw that comment.
This could turn for sure, but we have 14,000 votes in on that bond. And it is, you would have to see a major swing, I think, at this point, even with all this out, for it to flip. And it's possible, but it's really interesting to see this be so resounding, at least so far.
For the West Ada levy, it looks like that is a little closer. Still hard to tell because you can see at the bottom, there's a lot not reporting so far, but 54 in favor, 45 against right now.
Yeah, and then those trustee races that I know some people are watching tight, and this one again looks like just one precinct partially reporting. Lori Frazier beating Brent Hart early on. And then Anita Beckman and Angie Redford are neck and neck right now. So more results, please. It says last updated at 9:43. So it's been a bit. Hopefully we'll get some.
My 15-minute rule has really gone right out the window.
I know. It's good. It is every 15 minutes if you skip like 2 15-minute increments.
Right. Yeah.
People are watching though. We got a lot of people watching. Let's look.
We had more to say.
If you are on Facebook or on apparently LinkedIn, you can leave a question. Chris Carvin says this is an old one, but 33% of the audience thinks the cat is cute.
Aww.
I appreciate
now
that,
we have a
Chris.
second cat, so we are.
Yeah. What about mine?
right now.
Thoughts?
Oh,
So cute.
Oh, see, what did you name your cat, Autumn?
Cloudy.
Okay, sorry, Meredith. We're
No,
gonna
that's
say
okay.
something
I
on
was just
topic
gonna
instead of.
say- I mean, kind of. I was just gonna say, I think the Boise City Council District 1 is a really interesting one to watch, because it's pretty close right now. Obviously, we know that there is a lot of districts still out, but that's a district that we've typically seen pretty low turnout from. And maybe even more importantly, we haven't really seen candidates from those neighborhoods there. So I think it's really interesting to see. You know, I hope that by this districting, those neighborhoods are feeling more empowered and you know, are paying closer attention to what's happening and hopefully turning out to vote.
And I mean, I think that was sort of the stated intention from the legislature. And look, let's be real. There's a cynical view that the legislature did this because they want to see more conservatives in Boise City Council. Their stated intent was that they wanted to give more representation throughout the city. And you can decide at home which of those you think is right. But we do have a lot. 5/6 of the city council lives in the north end or the east end.
Mm-hmm.
Jimmy Halliburton lives in the Highlands, but essentially at the north end. So TJ Thompson has been the only really member outside of kind of the more liberal part of the city. You know, the TJ is a Democrat who was recruited to run by former Mayor Beater, but was the only person outside of that area in West Boise. I remember when I was a kid, when Brett Coles was mayor. I mean, I lived down the street from him on the bench, and the city council members were a little more distributed. We had Ann Houserath in the north end, but you had a little bit more geographic representation. So I think that was the idea here. I think everybody's got a little different thought on if this is going to do it. I mean, I know as a voter, I'm a Boise voter, but I'm not in one of the 3 precincts. And it occurred to me that if you are in one of the 3 precincts this year, you got to have a say on 4 city council members for the next 2 years. Because you got the 3 2 years ago, and then whichever one you were in. I only have say on 3. So there's a weird like dynamic, and it's just temporary. But then in 2 years, I only get to vote for one guy or gal. I don't get to have a say on these things, but they are going to vote on things that are going to affect my neighborhood.
Right.
So you know, if Lucy Willits wins tonight, let's say, and there's a project down the street from me, how's she going to vote? I have no say in how that works, and you know, that's part of the way representative democracies work. But it's going to change dynamics, I think.
Do we know who?
Sorry, go ahead, Gretchen.
I was just going to say, do we know who TJ Thompson endorsed for that seat, or did he? Do we know? Anyone?
I think he largely stepped out of that race. I haven't seen much from him. I could be wrong, but my understanding of that is that he just kind of stepped off stage and said, "I'm going to let whatever happens happen."
I saw Councilmember Thompson a couple times in recent weeks, and I walked up to him and I said, when I saw him about a month ago, I said, "How many more meetings?" And he was able to tell me the number. So I think he's ready to move beyond his political time. He works at Idaho Power, I believe, still, Margaret, if that's true. So he's got a full-time job, and I think he's just ready to go on to the next thing.
Yeah, do something else. Yeah.
Yeah. And you know, boy, go ahead, Meredith. Meredith, go.
Well, I was just going to say, and one of the Facebook commenters just brought this up, but I think to your point, the districting was a really hot topic in 2019 when I was campaigning. And my take on it was always just what you're saying. Well, you know, council is making decisions citywide. I think by districting, people are going to get really like micro focused on that neighborhood. That's their district. But they're still making decisions for the whole city. And it's important for candidates to still be kind of abreast with the issues that are plaguing everybody across the city. And it would be great if we could, if they had to live in a certain district, but we got to vote citywide. But I think also that would maybe contradict what the state was trying to enact at that point.
And that's how it works at the county level, right? And so Diana Laciando and Ryan Davidson had to live in a certain part of the county, but the whole county got to vote. So it wouldn't surprise me if we saw additional tweaks at the state level. I think there was some problems that they tried to fix this last legislative session, but it didn't get across the finish line. We have more results. Gretchen,
We do,
start
yes.
us off.
So now it looks like 8 of 17 precincts reporting for this first seat, Boise City Council District Seat 1. Willits still in the lead, 53%. Messler with 38%, and then Jones 8.3%. So yeah, Willits still got a pretty good lead, very solid.
Yeah, and we have a bunch of precincts that are full now, so you can see they're in green down here.
Yep.
So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we're getting there on City Council District 1. District 3, Lisa Sanchez.
Still a big lead.
Still a big lead. 63% over Greg McMillan with 32% there.
And then Woodings, 48%, pretty big lead there as well. Katie Fight, 23%, Steve Madden, 17%, and then Crispin with 10.8%.
And Crispin ran, was it 2 years ago? Did you run against Crispin, Meredith?
No, he must have been 4 years ago, I guess.
4 years ago. Yeah, it's hard to remember who.
Because what I can say is it wasn't 2 years ago.
Yeah, that's awful. But he ran before, so interesting. And he's on Public Works, so he's a kind of a city person. Garden City Mayor John Evans. We have a ways to go here, but
yeah,
pretty sizable lead. Garden City City Council. So people will choose 2 here, and Margaret will correct me if I'm wrong, but Bill Jacobs and Teresa Jorgensen are the current council members, and John McCrosty and Greta Moore were the challengers that ran as a team. Is that right?
Yes, but Bill Jacobs is not currently on the council. There is an open seat that was vacated by council president that is going to be vacated by council president Jeff Souza. So Bill Jacobs is running for that. Bill Jacobs, if he were to be elected, would fill that open seat, whereas Teresa Jorgensen is currently on the council. She was appointed by Mayor Evans.
So let's look at Cuny City Council. We should talk about some of these other
races.
We
haven't really touched on Cuny too much tonight.
And this is another vote for 2 situation. It's really fairly tight.
Yeah.
Laraway and Drake are the 2 top vote getters right now, but Jeff Marler close behind, as well as Chris Bruce, and we have a bunch to go. Meridian Council Seat 2.
Yeah, let's check in on that one. Okay, Joe Borton, 65%, still pretty big lead there. Hunter Wolf, 34%, so yeah, pretty commanding lead for Borton.
In Seat 4, Treg A. Burnt. So the reason I think burnt in my head is because and I apologize if he's watching, I want to say Brent with every fiber of my being. In fact, when Autumn turns in stories, I'm like, it's Brent. No, wait, it's Burnt. So I think you burnt, and it helps me not screw it up.
But what are you saying before Burnt? You burnt?
Well, so there was that I'm a big Saturday Night Live guy. I'm somewhat embarrassed by this, but there was that sketch that they had. I think it was with Ruth Bader Ginsburg with Kate McKinnon. And she would go on and she'd go, "You burnt!"
Oh.
And somebody made that reference on Twitter one day, and he responded with a GIF of RBG, and I was like, "Oh, this is hilarious!"
That is
and
funny.
now I'm going to remember it. I'm not going to call him Turd Brent, because that's what I'm always wanting to do when we're editing stories.
You burnt.
Anyway, this is BoiseDev late night here, and you guys are getting to see kind of what happens on the Slack channel.
BoiseDev Unplugged.
Right.
Unplugged. Council Seat 6.
Yeah, Kavanaugh, 54%, big lead there with Mike Hahn coming in second right now, 39% of the vote. And then Autumn, you said Scott who dropped out, but 5%.
Yeah. In Star, folks out in Star are voting for City Council. Yeah, well, he's got family and friends, right? Kevin Wheelock is well out in front of Ashley Freeman. We're going to look at those West Aided Trustee Zone 1.
I guess kind of tight, you could say. Frazier with 57%. Brent Hart not too far behind, 4.9%. That could, obviously change a lot. Still a lot of votes to go.
In Zone 3, Angie Redford and Anita Beckman are still running very close. Angie has a bit of a lead. We have a ways to go on this one, but certainly tight there, that sewer bond.
Yeah, still a bunch in favor.
Yeah, and that margin has not I think it's actually widened a little bit on the in favor side. And then the joint school district West Ada Schools supplemental levy is winning, but it's
Not
tight.
too much.
And
Yeah.
we got a lot of precincts to go. Let's come back up full here for a second, and let's talk. Well, that's the wrong button. That's the correct button. Let's talk about what some themes are. Maybe start with Meredith. What you're seeing.
Oh my gosh. It's still really close, but it is sort of a surprise. I mean, we talked about, I think before we were live, we were just talking about how it was so hard to tell. We're seeing across the city so many contradictory opinions and signs. I was just saying that on my street, I'm in District 5, and on my street alone, we have every candidate represented with yard signs. So it seemed so hard to know what was going to happen. And there are some big leads coming out, but I don't feel comfortable yet getting too confident, I guess.
Yeah, I don't either. It's interesting looking at the Woodings race. I thought this might be tighter, and right now with about a third of the precincts in, she's doing more strong than I thought we might have seen there.
One impact of the districts that, I think shouldn't be underestimated is it is really hard to get a sense of the race. And because then you could have someone flooding a candidate with support, donating money, liking their page, sharing their posts, who don't live in the district. And I think that once you shift to districts, it really changes the dynamic. And I was looking at stuff going, how do I know, okay, this post has 100 comments of people saying, go this candidate, go that candidate. But how do I know where these people live?
We had that trouble, I remember with the recall. We could tell where people were from and if they were really, and the recall of the attempted recall of McLean and Sanchez, if they were even voters. It was hard to tell.
Right.
I think we're seeing that more and more in Boise politics, which is a really interesting dynamic because even at planning and zoning, we have some projects where the majority of the testimony is coming from people that aren't Boise residents. They have to start with their address. And so we know where they live, and it's often not in Boise, which is so interesting that Boise politics are getting that way, where whether you live in a different district or you live on the other side of the city lines, whatever it is, people, the politics here seem to be impacting the greater.
Did the council and P&Z allow that if I get up there and I say I'm Don Day and I live at 1234 East 2nd and Meridian?
Yeah,
they still get there
you
3
could
minutes?
live in Chicago if you wanted to. You still get 3 minutes.
But does it have any impact? Does that matter because they don't live in the city?
I think it comes back to what we had alluded to earlier on, is if they are bringing it back to legal findings and are supported by our code, that's what changes the minds. You know what I mean? It's really hard to, it's really easy to have our emotions get tied up in what people are feeling, because that's primarily what we hear, but our decision has to be legally supported. So if somebody came from, I don't know, Europe or something, somewhere very far away, but had a
really wanted to weigh in on this,
right, a really strong reason statement, then it's definitely something we're going to consider. And even, I would say, even when the neighbors are so passionate and emotional, we really want to find a way to support that legally so that we can figure out a way to compromise or incorporate their beliefs.
Well, and I think a big reason that Boise attracts so much ire is two things. One, we're the capital. There's a whole lot of people who live in Meridian, live in Eagle, live in Nampa, who drive into Boise every day and spend their whole workday here, or maybe their businesses here. And so there is that, and so there's that ownership over Boise because we're the hub of the region. And so there's that ownership where people are like, man, I am really invested in this city, but I wish I can't vote because I don't live there. And then also, I think that there's that aspect of it. But there's also what we talked about with District 1 is there's a lot of places in Boise that are really close to city limits. There's a lot of places along, there's like State Street. There's a whole strip of State Street where the where you're going out of town, the right side of the road is Boise and the left side of the road is Garden City. That is a really interesting dynamic.
let's come back to that in just a bit. We're going to take one more quick break, and then we'll dive right back into those results.
And I should say thanks to our presenting sponsor, Regents Blue Shield of Idaho.
There's no place quite like Idaho. That's why Regents Blue Shield of Idaho is constantly reimagining the healthcare experience, tailoring it to fit the needs of local families and businesses. Rooted here since 1946, we're shaping the future with cutting-edge digital solutions, Idaho-based customer service, and unparalleled access to top doctors. That's the Regents difference you can count on. We get you because we are you.
Well, I'm curious if anyone is surprised about kind of like the landslide with the Boise wastewater bond. Maybe this is a question for you, Margaret, just because you've been covering that so much. And that's not, of course, all the precincts reporting, but I mean, 82% in favor. Does that surprise you, Margaret?
Honestly, it does. I think that if you looked at the comments on social media, which again, they don't tell you everything, I saw a lot of negative comments, and I had a lot of skeptical people contacting me about this bond, who were saying, there were some of it was just a misunderstanding about how bonding works, or the system, or growth, or impact fees, all these things. But also, I just saw a lot of people, just like I alluded to earlier, saying this is going to help growth. Developers want this, so thus I don't. And that was something that I had a lot. And so this commanding of a lead surprises me, and I am going to be very curious to see if it shrinks. But I was thinking this was going to be a nail biter. And so,
it's always hard for us editorially because we're trying to balance. And that's why people hear me say this. We really just try and focus on the facts versus opinions. And a big part of that is because I don't want to get too wound up about what people want us to do, because I can't tell. Social media comments are really always very misleading. I like data, right? Like votes. We try and answer questions and listen to that feedback, especially if it's about us and what we're doing. We talk about that internally a lot, but it's just so hard to tell anymore. And even like McGurdio Park is a good example. There were some people really engaged, but I was always struggling to get a sense of, do people care? Do people care if they don't live right by there, if they aren't in that part? And I don't know. And
I was wondering the same thing. Obviously, the people around there, of course, really cared. Yeah. We saw that. But yeah, does that matter to anyone else? I don't.
And it's hard to say. And, the McGurdio Park folks, they did their own candidate surveys this time and posted a lot of those. And so far, the candidates that said that they were in favor or not in favor of that project are not doing well tonight. And so was that an animating issue? I don't have any idea. Now the Ada County results page is just blank.
Let me give it a.
Hey, there it goes. Maybe we'll have some new numbers. No. What's going on here? Yeah,
mine's still updating with the same numbers, so you're not missing.
Okay,
much.
That's. Spoiler alert, there is no spoiler.
Spot, yeah,
I've got a 10:04 update time. So Gretchen and I chatted. We're going to go for probably about another 15 to 20 minutes here and see how it is.
Fingers crossed some more stuff comes in,
And again, if we don't have results, we'll have details in the morning up on BoiseDev.com. And we'll have at least a link to results in Gretchen's fabulous Idaho First newsletter. 20,000 subscribers for this thing. I'm going to start filling time. I got to say. I'm so proud of what you've accomplished with this product. It's so good. I'm so proud of the work that Margaret has done on this election, turning in a zillion stories. The work that Autumn is doing in Meridian, really bringing more stories from Meridian than any news outlet has done in a number of years. And I will mention Anna daily too. Anna doesn't cover politics for us, but she's been doing some phenomenal work. So I'm very proud as somebody who gets to work with these people every day. So I wanted to just gush for just a second on them publicly, because I don't get to do that enough.
We appreciate it.
And while we're at the Kudo Fest, Meredith, I really appreciate you doing this. I texted Justin Core today because I said, this is the first BoiseDev live election coverage without Justin Core.
Oh my gosh.
He now has a conflict of interest as the
Yes.
mayor's spokesperson, so he doesn't get to do this with us anymore. And you know, people are like, well, Meredith is a city official, but she's not a paid one. So I think that's the right. You're not paid as a planning.
No, I'm definitely not paid. Sometimes
Which
we
is
get
crazy.
a sandwich.
As a taxpayer, I'm getting
In full disclosure.
Here's a sandwich.
No, and
straight
we
top.
have some big items coming up too. I mean, the late nights, you know, you guys talk about the municipal power that can carry you through on these late nights, but certainly that's something that I'm more familiar with than I'd like to.
We appreciate, I think our society doesn't run without people like you who will volunteer. And so I appreciate that, and we'll not put too fine a point on that. But let's update and let's go through.
Yeah, well, and then lastly, Don, you'll like this. I just recently started getting the morning newsletter, and it's amazing. Totally worth the subscription to support this awesome team.
Thank you. And that I didn't know you were even a paying member, so I appreciate that. I try not to look because it's hard.
I'm sure. I get it. When I looked at my campaign financing too, you're like, wait, that person hasn't, or they have, or even worse, I have to say, when somebody donates to both candidates, like, what good is that?
Right. That's, hedge your bets, right?
Right, exactly.
But the morning newsletter is so fun because we go a little beyond just kind of the development and growth. And
for sure.
It's been really fun to launch that product. So thank you.
And it's free. If you're not signed up, subscribe.
Yeah, we're pushing that hard. Okay, so let's go through the results again. I'll start with District 1. They are saying we have 8 of 17 precincts in. I believe it. So far, we have 15.5% turnout, which doesn't sound like a lot, and it's not, but it is. Margaret, what was the turnout we had in the mayoral election 2 years ago on the spot?
Oh gosh, I think it was over 40%.
So, for a no mayor on the ballot, really nothing else to vote on in districts, 15% is a lot.
Yeah.
So in District 1, Lucy Willits is out to a lead, 53% over Laura Messler at 38%. In District 3?
Yeah, District 3, Sanchez still a big lead there, 62%. Mcmillan, 33% right now.
Yeah, in District 5, this website is... It's every media member in town blowing this website up.
Probably.
City council member Holly Wooding's out to a pretty commanding lead, 48% over Katie Fight at 24%, 23%. Steve Madden with 18%. Let's look at the Eagle City Council. I don't think we've done that yet tonight.
Let's see. Helen Russell, 34%. Then Melissa.
Melissa G.
Melissa G. Sorry, Melissa. I do not want to butcher that. 32.
And this is a vote for 2. And so they have pretty sizable leads over the challengers there. Garden City Mayor is John Evans, the incumbent, who is 70, Margaret?
Yeah, he's older for sure.
He's been there for quite a while as well,
as long
right?
as I remember.
This will be his 5th term if he holds on to this lead, which I suspect he will. This will be his 5th term.
So that would put him at 5 times 4 if he serves it out. 24 years as mayor?
No, he's
20 years.
20 years.
Yeah, let's see. Math. BoiseDev.com. Not brought to you tonight by math. Garden City Council, a vote for 2 election. Bill Jacobs and Teresa Jorgensen are out to a pretty good lead. We still have a ways to go. State Legislator John McCrosty and Greta Moore are behind there. Cuny City Council.
Yeah, let's check that out. Laura Way, sorry. 25%, and then we got Chris Bruce with 21%, not far behind. Also, Jeff Marler, 19%, Martha Drake, 18%, and Tyson Garten, 15%. So that race looks
it is tight, and that's a choose 2 as well. But boy, Bruce and Marler are really tight, and so is Drake. Mm-hmm. So we'll see where that goes. Meridian City Council, Joe Borton, the incumbent, out to a big lead there. It's slow.
There we go. You burnt 55%. And
I'm gonna have to
Now I
write
have
him a
to say it every
handwritten
time.
note and apologize for this if he's watching. I just there you go.
yeah, pretty decent lead there
Yeah.
for the Nelson.
Council seat 6, Luke Kavanagh, the incumbent, is leading over challenger Mike Honnett. It's close, but not super close. We're gonna skip down here. West Ada School Trustee. Now, West Ada has some voters in Canyon County.
Yeah, it gets
even
a
though it's
little
called West
tricky.
Ada, you can live in Canyon County, a part of it, and vote on this. So these have some additional results to come in. But Lori Ann Fraser in Zone 1 is leading. In Zone 3, we have still a tight race, although Angie Redford is out to a bit more of a lead. And then the Boise City Sewer District bond, which does not include the West Boise Sewer District, which is very strange, which Margaret and I discovered and did a story on. But this one is winning by a lot.
Big time, yeah.
And then the supplemental levy.
Let's see. That's pretty tight. Yeah, 52% yes and 47% against it.
Yeah, so that's a simple majority there. So that could still pass because it only needs that simple majority, but it is tight. We're gonna refresh. 1022. I think those actually were newer results, or maybe. Yeah, it's hard to say. I think we went through these.
But I don't think those numbers have changed since the
I don't think they
before that.
So what I'm hoping is over at the Ada County Clerk's office, they are watching us on all of their TVs.
No doubt.
And they're tired of us harassing them, and so they're changing the time to throw us off. I'm sure they're not watching, but maybe they'll hear about it.
I'm just going to have a shameless plug. Thank you
Go for
to
it.
all of our election officials. As much as we're kind of complaining about the slow results here, they have a tough job that's been made tougher by some of the national rhetoric around election security. And so I just want to say thank you to them, the volunteers, everybody out there who makes these things work. And that's not a political,
Margaret.
that is just a thank you for doing your work comment.
When I went to vote at City Hall, the nice woman who was there, because I voted ahead of time, I walked up and she goes, I think I stood like this, like I'm ready to vote. And she goes, "You look like Superman." And I went, nobody's ever called me that. But then I said, "No, ma'am, I'm just a mild-mannered reporter." Kid you not. So I love election officials.
I'm looking at the Boise City Council District number 3, and I am actually so surprised. Mcmillan did have, Margaret sort of alluded to this, but there was a lot of noise around his campaign. And it'll be interesting to see if Lisa keeps this lead as significant as it is. It'll be really interesting. I mean, he has, as we said, a lot of money in the race and a lot of signs around town. And it's kind of it's kind of goes to show you, I guess, that the supporters, as we discussed earlier, the supporters that you hear talking about candidates aren't always the supporters that are going to be able to vote for
I
that
would say that Lisa Sanchez is not to be underestimated. We don't know the results tonight, but I remember 4 years ago, she ran against Frank Walker, who had been an Ada County commissioner, who had the backing of the Beater administration, who, how do I say this? He's a white man in Boise, Idaho. There's a lot of white people here. And Lisa Sanchez beat him handily. And I think the political establishment was surprised at that. And so you have another race, different dynamics because we're in districts and not citywide, where so far with a little more than a third, she's fairly handily beating Greg Mcmillan. Yeah. I think maybe she gets underestimated sometimes, but right now she's got the political power here.
That'll be definitely an interesting one to watch.
Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. Let's get some closing thoughts from each member of the panel. Sure. And I'll let you lead that, and then we'll sign off unless we have some new results, and then we'll do the results again.
Well, I guess my thoughts. We're just gonna have to. I hate to say this, but wait and see, because it's kind of an unclear picture. Besides the Boise City Sewer District bond, that one, I think we know which way that's going to go. I could be wrong, but it looks like a lot of people are in favor for that. So yeah, I mean, we'll have all of your guys' updates, or at least a link to an update tomorrow morning to see how it all shakes out.
Yeah. You want to go around the horn?
Yeah. Margaret, how about you?
Yeah, I definitely think that do not close out, do not look at these early results and say this is what's going to happen. I think Gretchen's right that water bond, that is pretty far ahead. But especially in District 3, I think that as more and more of those day of votes get counted, I think we're going to see Greg Mcmillan's votes tick up. Because like I said, those absentee ballots, they tend to skew liberal. And so we see that stuff creep up over the course, the conservative vote creep up over the course of the evening. So keep watching District 3. District 5, I think, surprised me. I really was I was with Dawn. I thought that race would be a lot tighter. We saw a lot of Katie Fight signs. I know she was knocking doors. I know Steve Madden was knocking doors. Crispin Gravatt was knocking doors, and of course, and so I was thinking we were going to see a whole lot tighter. And so again, that's another one where I am very curious to see if those numbers will creep closer as we report more precincts. But that's a bigger lead than I expected Hollywoodings to have. Given
what's interesting here is that Katie Fight won a ballot, what they call a ballot code area. I need to actually switch this to precinct. But it looks like the results are all counted in 1710, and Katie Fight won. So she's got some some supporters there kind of around Boise State, which is it's interesting. But so far, Hollywoodings is leading.
You got to remember that Boise State precinct, that is the precinct where the Reidenbaugh apartment building was.
Yeah.
And she was at she's been a major critic of the city's decision to approve a development there, which would knock down 23 units of existing, aging affordable housing. She was at the rally that those tenants held. And there I saw her handing out voter registration paperwork. And was encouraging tenants who lived there and people who lived in that immediate neighborhood who opposed that project to vote. And so it would not surprise me that her power comes from that particular neighborhood, because she has been very engaged on that micro issue in a way, she really zeroed in on that.
Yeah.
I think that's such an important piece of context, Margaret. Thank you for adding that in.
And Meredith, what are your thoughts? Obviously, it's a little early, but how things have shaped up so far.
Yeah, I guess I am, anything can happen, but I am surprised to see where some of the numbers are, but I'm not, I'm not settling there yet. We'll have to wait for the morning newsletter.
Yeah.
Thank you for the plug.
Yes.
And Autumn?
Yeah, I think it's been interesting. I mean, the incumbents have a pretty prominent lead in Meridian, but it's close. The challengers are closer than I thought it was going to be.
Mm-hmm.
So it's worth watching.
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting to see that. I agree. And boy, right now, where we're at right now, this was looks like maybe an establishment night. We've got in Boise, Garden City, and Meridian, all of the incumbents are in the lead. Whether it holds out for that for morning, we don't know yet. But that's kind of the theme right now is, there's definitely an undercurrent because you can see this in some of these tighter races. But for right now, people are saying maybe we'll stick with the incumbents for 2 more years until election Mageddon.
And then everything gets crazy.
Everything gets crazy. Okay.
Are we calling it?
I think we're going to wrap it up.
All right. Well, thank you everyone so much for joining us tonight. We tried to keep you as up to date as we could with the rate of how the results are coming in. And like Meredith said too, in our newsletter tomorrow, we can at least get you a link with all the updated results.
Thanks, everybody.
There's no place quite like Idaho. That's why Regents Blue Shield of Idaho is constantly reimagining the healthcare experience, tailoring it to fit the needs of local families and businesses. Rooted here since 1946, we're shaping the future with cutting-edge digital solutions, Idaho-based customer service, and unparalleled access to top doctors. That's the Regents difference you can count on. We get you because we are you.